Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the show. My name is Nick Reed, streaming live, KSGF.com. Hope you're doing well. Going to be, weather-wise, pretty much in line with what we have expected, or what we've experienced, rather, over the last several days. We'll have a look at that. We are broadcasting tomorrow. Live at Scramblers, Friday Road Show, sponsored by Custom Shade Window Tinting, powered by 3M Window Film. And Local for Less will be kicked off 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Your chance to win half-priced $50 gift cards to Fun Mountain at Big Cedar Lodge. And while you are at KSGF.com, you can also learn about the Care to Learn donation drive. A number of our partners, sponsors of that, A1 Custom Car Care being one of them, IHOP being one of them, and Delta Roofing being another one of them. So three of our partners that are sponsoring that, which is an effort to serve over 100,000 students in over 40 school districts across Missouri. We have Author of the Week coming up, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone in the 8 o'clock hour, Christy Fulnecki in the 7 o'clock hour, and a great deal of information to cover. Renewed reports that there are behind-the-scenes plans to replace Joe Biden, and what that could potentially look like. I still believe that potentially the reason that they wanted a debate so early, I'm not sure. There may have been. But I just don't believe that there's ever been a general election presidential debate before the nominees were even nominees. I mean, you think about that. They're presumptive, obviously. Well, much more presumptive for Trump than Biden. I mean, that one's still clearly in question here. I mean, you think about that. Here is a debate that's occurring. It's going to be coming up on the 27th, and CNN, of course, is moderating it. And neither of these individuals are officially the nominees. One of them, the Biden administration is trying to imprison, so people aren't able to even choose him as a candidate, or less likely to, of course. Even if they do imprison him, he's still going to be on the ballot. The other one, you have, according to numerous reports, some of the biggest players within the party that are coming up with contingency plans. You have the open conversations that the people on the left that are the influencers, I don't mean social media influencers, but they write the op-ed pieces, the Nate Silvers and some of these others that are saying, hey, Biden needs to be dumped. Yes, that's a risky move, but it's even riskier having him on the ticket. Yet they're still just on the 27th going to have this debate. And I believe that a very likely reason that's occurring is it a sink or swim potential situation where I believe that there's so many Democrats that are influential in all of this that don't find this to be an easy answer. We oftentimes assign, I believe, more well-laid plans than actually exist. There are these assumptions that everything is planned out, that whatever is going to happen with Joe Biden is already planned out. It's this plan, and everything is just going to work out. But I think that defies a reality in which you have warring factions within the Democrat Party. And frankly, you have a lot that they just don't know what to do with this guy. Is it a better gamble to keep him on the ballot and try to drag him across the finish line? Because, look, while Trump is beating him in all of these swing states, Democrats are very good at rationalizing and think, well, once he, if we are able to throw him in jail, that could change things, and maybe things would swing our way. And so Biden is, it's in no way, shape, or form, particularly given the ballot harvesting and the other tactics that are taken by Democrats that give them an advantage when it comes to some of these outcomes. It in no way, shape, or form is out of reach for Biden. And so if you are a Democrat mover and shaker, you look at that, but at the same time, you recognize that it doesn't look good. And at any given moment, there could be that one thing that Biden does that really shifts things even further away from his favor. As many of the things as we see, I'm telling you, for example, if this guy falls downstairs and breaks a bone, which is clearly something that they've been very concerned about. They're changing his shoes. They walk. If you notice, anytime there is where he's walking, he is surrounded very, very closely by individuals now. And many have argued that they think that the reason for that is in order to prevent cameras from exposing his gait and just the way that he walks, because it feeds into this notion that he's really old and decrepit. But I think perhaps it's to try and catch him if he trips, he falls, prevent him from actually hitting the ground. And they have obviously lowered the stairs going into Air Force One. They've done all of these things because they recognize, I'm sure, that if he breaks a bone and they have to wheel him around in a wheelchair because he's got a broken hip or something, already they recognize, whether they agree with it or not, that a vast majority of Americans have grave doubts about his physical ability to continue on as president. And having that visual, there are just all these factors that I believe make many of these Democrats, who are oftentimes thought of as having secret plans, not know what the best thing to do for them is. I mean, I think we can all agree Trump makes them irrational. I mean, you just listen to some of the things that they say. So these are not people that are capable of having rational thoughts, controlled, rational, realistic thoughts, particularly in the context of Donald Trump. So you have people that are emotionally erratic, oftentimes suffer from paranoid delusions. Trump's going to imprison us. Trump is a dictator. All this left-wing projection. And this whole layout, the idea that somehow they are going to make these very wise, calculated chess moves, I just don't think that is as in the cards as we oftentimes think that it is. So while we all sit around wondering what are they going to do, I think that they are as well. And that there could very well be this incident that occurs that throws everything into a tizzy. And I don't know that this debate that is taking place so far in advance, you're talking almost 2 months before the Democrats officially nominate Biden, that it isn't an opportunity to just see, well, what happens? Is he going to do the bare minimum that allows us to portray him as, see, he's still got it? They tried to do that after the State of the Union, where by all normal standards, it was a very unimpressive performance, but because the expectations for Biden are so low, the left saw the fact that he didn't do something totally humiliating as a huge victory. Or will he have a seize up moment? Will he just do something that is unavoidable, something that they're not going to be able to claim as a deep fake or a cheap fake or edited, manipulated video, because it's going to be live. People are going to be watching this. It's going to be played over and over again. That will help them make that decision. Point being is, I don't know that there's not this moment they're waiting for. Some of these people, they're waiting for a sign. You see that. Maybe you've done it before. God, just tell me I need a sign. Even if you're not a religious person, like, please just give me a sign, something, so I know whether to do this or that. That's all I'm waiting for. And that is perhaps what it is that some of those folks are waiting for with Biden. And that debate so far in advance of the nomination process could be a setup of an opportunity. Like, okay, well, let's create a scenario in which maybe we will get this sign. Or I could be overthinking it. Got some new poll numbers out, some that, of course, the Biden people are going to be touting to high heaven. And Donald Trump coming out swinging at Fox News, largely because on their board, of course, Paul Ryan, who is one of these individuals that is very incapable of controlling his emotions. He's so anti-Trump. He has declared he won't even go to the Republican National Convention if Trump gets the nominee. And Trump hitting out at Fox News under him. So we'll cover some of that also as we continue on this morning. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line is 447 KSGF. Now, the latest news. The first alert forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. From Color 10, Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly sunny today, high near 88, 69 tonight. Mostly sunny, a high near 90 tomorrow, 92 on Saturday. Yesterday being Juneteenth, we talked a little bit about the history of it and what I believe is the complete and other success of Democrats portraying it somehow as a holiday that they champion, while oftentimes Republicans just don't pay too much attention to it. It should be Republican Victory Day and an opportunity to explain the history of the fight over slavery. And much like when it comes to abortion, the Democrats' belief that they hold dominion or held dominion over slaves, they were just property, keep your hands off my stuff, I can do with them what I want, while Republicans, and as a party, was born out of, no, that's wrong, and we'll fight over that. We got on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line a snapshot of the Babylon Bee, and it noted Juneteenth. America celebrates Juneteenth, the day that Republicans freed all the Democrat slaves. Absolutely 100% accurate. I saw some of the headlines yesterday about Joe Biden making gains with a demographic that could save him. And some of the headlines made it sound as if there has been this massive shift that is this lifeline for Joe Biden's campaign. And it is independent voters. And there is a poll that shows, all within the margin of error, Biden bumping up a little bit, and he was below within the margin of error. Now he's above. So essentially, in terms of margin of error, it's completely unchanged. But this is, again, grasping at any straws that are imaginably in existence, rationalization. Everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And incidentally, I'm not saying the opposite. I mean, when you're talking about within margin of error, you're talking about no change. And it is one poll. Now, that doesn't mean that this is Trump's and that Trump is going to get all the independent voters. We don't know that. But the hyperventilation of finally things are turning around for Joe Biden. So since May, there's a 3-point change. Trump was ahead by 1 point last month. Biden is up by 2 points today, so 50 to 48, all within the margin of error. So it's unchanged ultimately. Beyond improve, evaluations of the economy, a range of other events since the May survey could influence small shifts in vote preferences, including Trump's convictions, Hunter Biden's gun trial conviction, a positive U.S. jobs report, and Biden's immigration executive order. Biden's current 50% support is his best this election cycle. He hasn't been ahead of Trump since October of 2023, and that was just by 1 point. So, again, all within the margin of error. There was also a 4-point shift in the expanded ballot when other presidential candidates are included. Biden tops Trump by 1 point, 43-42. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. gets 10. Cornel West and Jill Stein each 2%. Trump did well among men, 15 up. Rural voters, 17 up. White men without a degree, 30 up. In other words, your blue-collar worker, hard-working Americans. White evangelical Christians up over Biden 46%. Biden matched, and again, this is the one poll, with strong support among voters ages 65 and over, 15%, with women 17%, urban voters 23%, and white women with a college degree 28%. And it breaks down some further. So this is something that is going to be touted as a sea change shift. Ultimately, within the margin of error, however, it's no different. But you understand, I mean, they've got to take anything that they've got. And it doesn't mean that, once again, I don't want to mock the Biden supporters as if the message is there's absolutely no way he can win this. But it's more of a mockery of taking what is within the margin of error, no change at all in a poll, and touting it as if this is some sort of a real big win and a sign that the tides are changing. Meanwhile, when you look at the state by state, former President Donald Trump is now leading Biden in the swing state of Arizona. This according to the latest Rasmussen report. The survey asked respondents if the 2024 presidential election were held today and the candidates were President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump, for whom would you vote? 47% of likely voters, these are people that say I plan on voting, said that they would support Trump, while 40% said the same of Biden. So you have a 7-point lead in Arizona for Donald Trump. 9% undecided. Notably, independents are split, Trump and Biden, and that is what national poll also showed. When third-party candidates, including independent candidate RFK Jr., Cornel West, Green Party candidate Jill Stein are added to the mix, Trump still leads the pack, 41 to Biden's 37% support. And so we're, again, just seeing more of the same in these swing states where Trump is doing exceptionally well. There's been a lot of to-do over the fact that in Iowa, he's just up massively there. Though I don't expect that he was, or anyone believed that he would necessarily lose Iowa. Frank Luntz noting that that's not the real story. The real story is that he's within margin of error, tied in states like Minnesota that have not gone to a Republican in many voters' lifetime. And that's where the real story is. Incidentally, do you want to know, there's the debate that still to some degree exists, who is RFK Jr. most likely to hurt? Well, I could tell you who CNN thinks, Biden, because they're not going to let him debate. Now, we're going to take a break, and then their rationale and reason for this, and they have a standard that's set for those that can make the debate stage. But we also know these outlets don't have any real ultimate standard other than help the Democrat, help Joe Biden. We've got to stop Trump. Trump is evil. Trump's a dictator. So that's ultimately the real standard here. But the announcement that RFK Jr. is going to fall short and will not be on that debate stage, that is ultimately the standard set by CNN, shows that really CNN believes that in all likelihood RFK Jr. is a drain on Biden more than Trump. You have just over a week in order to join us for the upcoming post-election Great Escape, the Riu Palace, all-inclusive, top-of-the-line resort north of Cancun. It's about 45 miles north. It's an incredible resort. Junior suites that are just, or the cost, if you're going to join us, want to join us, just over $1,800 per person. That includes the airfare. That includes the 6 days that we're going to be there, and the junior suites, and the food, the alcohol, the tipping, the taxes, transfer fees, all of that stuff is included. But the deadline is July 1st for you to get signed up. So make sure that you don't miss that deadline. We're trying to, this is one of the things that I've learned being in this industry as long as I have, is that it doesn't matter how often you repeat something. There's always going to be someone who says, why don't you talk about this? Like, man, we talk about it all the time. And so the more that you talk about it, the more people you hit. And so that's why, because that deadline is a deadline that we haven't really worried about in the past, because we were able to get things arranged far enough into the future that there were several months, like 3 or 4 months. That just wasn't the case this time around. And so that's why it is that we're, trying to, for those who listen, you're like, Well, I've heard this like 8 times now. Trust me, there is at least one person out there who wants to go on the trip that still has yet to hear it. So, we, of course, for that reason, with a great deal of frequency, wanting to make sure everyone who wants to go is able to go. Because the worst thing, and I've had this happen even in the past with the big windows of opportunity, people that say, oh, we wanted to go, but we just didn't, we took too long to decide, or we called and it was too late, and you just hate to see somebody not get to go for that reason. July 1st is the deadline. We have all the details for you to get signed up and where you can get more information under the KSGF Great Escape at ksgf.com. The First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals from Color 10. Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly sunny today, high near 88. Clouds, low of 69 tonight, mostly sunny 90 tomorrow. Saturday, sunny hot with a high near 92. RFK Jr. falls short of the CNN debate requirements. So CNN has a requirement with standards that are part of the debate. If you want to be on the debate stage, you have to hit these certain marks. And it makes sense. You've got to have some standard, right? One of the standards that they set is that candidates must appear on a sufficient number of state ballots to reach the 270 electoral vote threshold. So the rationale behind this is they have to at least have the capability of winning the election. If they aren't even on enough ballots to reach 270, then they can't be president anyhow. Now, there is a caveat to that because that's not exactly true. If no one, so RFK Jr., if he's only on enough ballots to get 100 electoral college votes, and let's say he just gets whatever certain number, but that then results in no one hitting that 270, then the House of Representatives decides. And theoretically, they could choose R.F. Kennedy Jr. I don't think anyone believes in any likelihood whatsoever that that's going to occur, but you can't say it's not possible because that's the way that the system functions. That would be an option available. They are saying that he is only, so that aside, that he's currently eligible for 100 electoral votes when considering states he's certified in, and other states like California and Hawaii, where CNN recognizes him as the presumptive nominee or a minor party. Now, the conflict, if you want to see it as such here, because if you go to RFK Jr.'s site, he's got a site where you can see where he's on the ballot. And according to that, the ballot access tracker, he is eligible in enough states. He has enough signatures to be on the ballots in enough states, not to get just 100, but to get 310 electoral votes, which is well above the 270. So the argument there is he's got more than enough. Here's the kicker. Because the debate is so early, many of these states have not gotten to their deadline to officially certify this stuff. And so while the RFK Jr. campaign is saying, listen, these are all the states we have enough signatures to certify, those states are saying, well, that may very well be, but we don't certify until down the road. And so CNN is not counting those. They're saying, oops, sorry. We know that you say this, but the fact of the matter is those states they haven't verified, and until that verification takes place. Now, if I'm the RFK Jr. campaign, I would argue, so in other words, you've put me in essentially an impossible situation here. Because this, it's not my fault. I can't control this. I think that there's one thing that we can all, if you're rational, agree with. If RFK Jr. was universally believed to be a candidate that would substantially harm Trump, CNN would have him on that debate stage. CNN would say, listen, the point here is to make sure that we have viable candidates on there, and it's not RFK Jr.'s fault that these states haven't certified his signatures. We believe that he has enough outside a margin of error, because you're always going to have some signatures that get thrown out. And by the way, the DNC is already in full mode with attorneys trying to prevent him. I forget if it's New York, New Jersey. There's a state they're already working to prevent people from being allowed to vote for him on the ballot. You know, the defenders of democracy, they're already trying to rig the election in that capacity by banning him from being on the ballot. They tried to ban Trump. Now they're working on trying to ban RFK Jr. This is how we know, one, that CNN is doing everything they can in order to help, even in the context of the debate. Whether this question is, well, can CNN be fair? The debate itself, they're showing their cards here. Not that we need to see them. We all know who these people are. They are hysterically anti-Trump. These are people who generally do not function in a rational capacity anyhow, but you throw in their paranoid delusions regarding Trump, and you just get a whole mess. But there is no doubt, if they felt that RFK Jr. could be the difference between whether Trump's in the White House or not in the negative, in other words, that that he's going to draw the votes away from Trump, and that he could be the assist that is needed in order to make Biden to win, they would argue that the spirit of their rules had been satisfied, that while technically RFK Jr. may not be certified in enough states in order to potentially reach the 270 mark on the electoral votes, that the spirit of it is there, and it's not his campaign's fault that those states haven't certified yet, and that when you look at the numbers and you assume that there's going to be a certain percentage that are thrown out, he has more than enough in these certain states in order to reach that mark. And so in an attempt to have the most fairness possible in the context of democracy. It is only right that CNN put RFK Jr. on that debate stage. But of course, with the vast majority of polling shows that he doesn't hurt Trump, but instead he helps Trump by being on the ballot, CNN's like, I'm sorry. Too bad, so sad. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. The Biden campaign, according to a report, has created a special task force to mitigate what they're now calling cheap fake videos. There is a recognition here that this has gotten out of their control, that they are not successful in convincing Americans that what they're seeing isn't what they're actually seeing. They tried, and we've all been recipients of this, to tell us that Joe Biden is just as sharp as can be, and physically, intellectually, and that doesn't help them. It's not helping them. And so now they are taking this new tact of just telling you what you're seeing isn't real without saying it. Now, I suspect what we're going to see here, this task force is essentially, at least the attempt is going to be, to have it function in the same way that the letter from the 51 current and former intelligence agencies officials operated. And that was to allow media to suppress information, allow media to attempt to rig this election by censoring. And it would make sense because it was Blinken, who at the time was of the Biden administration, who coordinated that effort with that letter from the 51 folks from the former and current intelligence, mostly CIA people, to claim that the Hunter laptop thing was all Russian disinformation, and then be able to use that to allow media outlets to censor information, to not cover stories, so that they could wipe their hands clean, saying, hey, well, there's just, we don't want to be spreading Russian information here. We don't. And it also allowed them to try and demonize anyone who would share the information as somehow an ally of Putin, because Putin is the one who's behind this whole story. And so if you're out there talking about Hunter Biden's laptop, then you are just a puppet of Putin. That's how that operation all functioned. And we know it now. I mean, everyone knows it. This isn't in denial. I mean, that laptop clearly is real. It was used by the prosecutors as evidence. I mean, no one other than some of those individuals that signed the letter are still claiming it's part of Russian disinformation. And you're always going to have some. So this special task force that is being formed, I believe, is going to be an attempt to repeat that interference in the election. To have this task force that is going to declare this video, that video, this speech, all of this evidence as being a cheap fake, a term that they made up in order to suggest that it's bad and it's wrong, that they can then go to the media outlets, and then the media outlets can start telling you or trying to convince you what you're seeing isn't real. I mean, this is George Orwell. I mean, this is so 1984 Orwellian. These are the things that some of the most prolific writers who one of the reasons that they were such great writers is they understood human nature, and they understood the macabre nature of tyrants and those with fascistic traits and the totalitarians. And so they would write these stories as a warning, if you will, or this is what life looks like when these people are in charge. And I mean, it is taken right from Orwell's writing, where you have the elites telling you what you're seeing is not what you're really seeing. And the party faithful will abide because they're very obedient. And then the rest of us get targeted because we think, because we refuse to deny reality. And we're already seeing the fruits of their labor. There's and this is just one example, NBC News. The deceptive Biden G7 video was quickly debunked, but it kept going viral anyhow. So even in the headline, see that, and this is also how they use fact checkers. They come up with all these little mechanisms as a tool to relay to you, oh, this is already decided. And here is the ultimate truth that you must believe. They use the term expert in order to get you to comply. So Fauci, for example, is an expert. Whatever he says is golden. You must believe it. If you don't believe in science. Fact checkers have already fact checked this. So fact checkers, fact check said this. So that means that's true. That's what you have to believe. No need for you to think beyond that. We've already done it for you. We've done the thinking for you. Not only did we provide you some information, as selective as it may have been, we've gone ahead and decided to let you know what the fact is, the ultimate in fact. So that's what the fact check is. And now we got cheap fake and debunked. Now, how do they debunk something? Well, they just ask somebody from the Biden campaign. And they say, no, that's edited. That is giving an untrue portrayal of what actually happened. Oh, okay, this has been debunked because they said so. It's a coordinated effort. It doesn't take any sort of backroom deal, in order to do this. These networks desperately, this is what they need. These are people that are trying to get Joe Biden elected at these networks. Most of them at some point worked for Obama or the Biden administration. These are Democrat operatives by way of their very nature, their jobs. This is what they do. They just shift from campaigns and positions in the White House over to the propaganda wing of the operation and the news media. So they need anything they can get. And this, much like the CIA letter, they needed something. We got to have something. You know, this is a big story. What? Oh, okay. Oh, it's Russian disinformation. Okay, good. This gives us approval to not air it and to demonize anyone who does. So now the Biden campaign's creating a special task force in order to declare these videos as debunked, as not true, as right-wing, which will allow outlets like NBC to print stories, deceptive Biden G7 video quickly debunked, but it kept going viral anyhow. The problem they're going to run into this time is that the belief that something is wrong with Joe Biden is already out there because people have been watching it for a very long time. And where they really have a problem is people who have had experience with people who have dementia, people who have Alzheimer's, because these are the people increasingly that are speaking out and going, that's what this is. You cannot tell me that that's not what this is. And so it's gotten well beyond their control because people have seen it. That's a different situation than the Hunter laptop story, which popped up. No one knew about, oh, here's this thing, and then they get the CIA to step in, run a disinformation campaign claiming it's not true, which allowed suppression. So come vote time, we would learn there were a tremendous number of people that had no idea about the laptop because they don't seek out information. They watch the news at night and maybe get it from the Daily Show or wherever. And so those outlets aren't reporting on it. Or if they do, it's to tell you it's not true. This is a different situation. The reason this is in the news is because everyone is talking about it. Not what the Biden campaign would like to believe, which is a scenario in which everyone's talking about it because it's in the news. That's not what's going on here. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. One of the best decisions that I've made recently was to take the next step in safety and security. And I did that by purchasing my first firearm with Quick Draw Gun in Monette. Now, if you've been thinking about taking that next step as well, now is the time to do it because Quick Draw Gun is holding their annual summer sale now through July 4th. Now, most guns, they are currently on sale, and there's also a lot of blowout sale items that you'll want to take advantage of as well. And while you're down there, it's also a good time to think about doing a ammo restock to get ahead of any potential ammo shortages that we may see as we inch closer to 2025. It's well worth the drive down there. The shop, it's about an hour or so away from Springfield. And before you go, if you are looking for a specific firearm or accessory, you can reach out to Brad and his team today. You can find all of that contact information for Quick Draw Gun in Monette under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Yeah, I want to note that the amazing difference in approach and the way that we as voters are supposed to receive the information when it came to things about Biden versus things that reported about Trump. With Biden, we're always told that the information that we actually observe ourselves, we're not supposed to believe. With Trump, we were supposed to believe the things that we did not see. How many hoaxes, whether it was the P-tape, the Russian dossier, you just go down the list. We went through a bunch of them yesterday. Greg Gutfeld had just, ripped off like 8 different hoaxes that we were told that that Trump did this, Trump did that, and so forth. And we were and it was reported as true, even though there were never any attributable sources. Never. It was always, well, this person said they heard an anonymous source. There was a huge tizzy at one point. I think it was an op-ed piece that was written in the New York Times. It was some national paper, and it was from somebody within the Trump White House, and it was all about how erratic Trump was and how everyone secretly was trying to figure out a way to get rid of him. That we would hear all these stories all the time. There was this huge trying to figure out who it was, speculation. Oh, maybe it's Mike Pence. Maybe it's, this person over here. And you had all of these stories written and this narrative created about Donald Trump behind closed doors being erratic, frightening his own people. They were worried he was going to start World War III. This is all the talk about using the Constitution for the cabinet to vote him out and make Mike Pence president. This is how concerned they were. Yet, none of that there was ever any actual evidence of. But we were supposed to believe it. With Biden, it's the flip side. We see the evidence everywhere. But we're told that's not true. No, you can't believe that. You can't believe these things you see with your own eyes. I think that is an extremely noteworthy distinction between what we're supposed to believe according to the media. A1 Custom Car Care, all of your car care needs, including tires, full service. That's right. We're very accustomed to separate places. You got your tire place, you got your place you go get your oil change, you go get your check engine light checked, you get all that stuff done. But now they do full service tires as well, balances, of course, rotations, tire repair, tire replacement, so you can have it all done in one place. No longer the need for two separate trips with A1 Custom Car Care. Not Friday, but I guess next Monday, July 1st, whatever day that is, it's coming up just over a week, is the final day to get signed up for our Great Escape coming up in November. So if you do not get signed up by July 1st, then you will be missing out. All the details at ksgf.com. Tomorrow, we also are going to be broadcasting live out at Scramblers, as we do every Friday. Friday Roadshow, sponsored by Custom Shade Window Tinting, which is powered by 3M Window Film. Weather in a moment. Now, the latest news update. First alert forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49. Meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly sunny today, a high near 88. Cloud 69 tonight for low. Sunny 90 tomorrow, Saturday. Sunny hot with a high near 92. Christy Fulnecki with us in
Good
studio.
morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
Went on vacation.
Yeah, how was
Yeah,
that?
it
You do
was
this
great.
annual family trip,
Yeah.
don't you? Yeah. No,
Yeah, and all the kids were there. Yeah, because they're leaving for college. Actually, all of them next week. And we take our third daughter to the Naval Academy for plebe summer. So
So how was Florida?
it was
How
fun.
was DeSantis land?
It was awesome. And that's what we were
Land
just
of the
talking about
free.
I know it is. There are a lot of flags, American flags
Yeah.
in Florida. And a lot of shark warnings. So I learned a lot about sharks. So we've been going there, I think maybe to the same place for 15 years with our kids. And so I was reading all this stuff because there were the shark attacks around I guess it's maybe east of Dustin. So it's in the Panhandle where a lot of people from here go. So there were, I think, 2 or 3 separate attacks. And then in really shallow water. So everybody's trying to figure out, are the orcas coming? There's and that's normally you don't see a lot of the shark attacks, at least in that area that are so close to the shore. And you have all the warnings and everything. So I was looking and I thought, well, I'm going to learn a lot about this, obviously, because we're on the beach. And it said, if you're in murky water, don't go into the water. And I was like, well, for 15 years, we've been going in the murky water, so I don't know.
With all these warnings that they give and all the attention paid, when you look at just the numbers, you are much more likely to be murdered by an illegal alien in this country than killed by a shark. I mean, really, by the sheer numbers, but they're like much different approach of concern.
You're like, is it the media? But a lot of them, it's people with their cell phones, and then and because you can't stay in the water, that you're like, do I let my kids go in there? So that's kind of a hard decision. So
well, probably depends on how many kids you have. Do you pick some out? You're like, hey, you can go in the water, but not so much.
You did pretty well in school this year, so you have a bright future, but you're struggling.
Yeah. You're struggling. Go on out as far as you want. Don't worry. Now, we still have hope in, so... Yeah. Why don't you stay up here and have some snacks? Have a sandwich.
Yeah. But it's great. I mean, Florida is booming. I mean, that place since COVID, the property prices are incredible. Everybody's moving there.
Yes. Yes, this is true.
Yes.
Despite what we're told about what a horrible place it is.
That's right.
This world that we live in, where virtually everything we're told is the opposite of the truth. We were talking earlier about Biden and what everyone
Those
clearly
fake
has seen for a
videos.
long
Yeah.
time, and now they're trying to convince us, no, that's not what you're seeing. When it comes to states like here, you have Florida and Gavin Newsom and Democrat. I mean, Gavin Newsom I think we talked about this last time you were on, said that in terms of dealing with homelessness, that California was leading the way. And
He's delusional too.
well, sure, and you listen to the media, you listen to Democrats, and Florida is a scary, dangerous place, particularly for black people, and this and that and so forth. And it's like it defies logic. People flee California to move to places like Florida, while the media, the left, the Democrats tell us it's like everything that is reality, they say the opposite. The border is secure, I mean, they told us that for how long, and it's crazy. It really has gotten to the point where if there is a common narrative about anything with the left, you're safe in believing in all likelihood the opposite is true.
I mean, and this whole thing, I'm sure you talked about it, but I thought it's so embarrassing to see your president barking in the middle of it's like Biden is starting to bark.
Yeah.
I mean, what is going on with that?
Yeah, that audio was pretty weird.
Did you play it?
Yeah, we played.
Yeah.
Well, and
It's
it reminded me again of there was a video that went viral. It was some local news story, and I think it was about a dog attacking or something. And I know this is one of Sarah's favorites. And it's an older couple, and the old man imitated the dog, but he really and so it was crossed between that, but then at the same time, Biden at that event just the other day in which he did that, he sounded a little bit like Cookie Monster too, like no. So it was a combination of the two.
Because then he, has this like Joker face after he barks.
But this is where we're informed, however, that we didn't actually see that.
Cheap face.
Or somehow that was edited to make it look like he did that, or it was taken out of context. Which I'm always like, well, what was the context? I'm interested. What was the context of Joe Biden going? Because
Sunshine request on how this happened when they're in the meeting and they're talking about, oh yeah, well, let's come up with this thing called cheap fake videos. Yeah. So he's like, you think they're really gonna believe that? Well, I don't know. I mean, we might as well try it.
It's so sad what specifically the Democrats have turned this country into. It is. It's embarrassing. It is extremely embarrassing. Given that we were once upon a time, we were the light on the shining hill. We were the country everyone saw as led the way, the leader of the free world. And it was because of, among other things, we had this intellectual curiosity to figure things out. We did not just comply, and we weren't simply obedient because we were told to be. And now you have this huge segment of the population, apparently half of the voting population in the presidential election upcoming, that have become what it was that other countries were when we weren't. It's just sad. It's embarrassing.
It's permeated our culture. I mean, as a business owner, I see it all the time, and I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what is wrong with me or it's my age, but some of these young people do not have any work ethic at all. I mean, they're so entitled, and part of that is for getting free stuff from the government and money during COVID, I'm sure. But I mean, it's not just on these universities that you're seeing this entitlement. It's all over the place, and you're like, why can't you just work? And then some of my employees have said, well, you just tell me what to do, and I mean, you're bossing me around. Well, I'm the BOSS.
Yeah, that's how it works. That's why I'm paying you. Yeah, it really isn't. And I think and I think a lot of it is. It's entitlement, and it is the way they're raised. And you do see increasingly that and it is younger, relatively speaking, people, they don't even understand why it's a problem if they just come to work 30 minutes late, or if, because that's how they were raised. Their parents would tell them to do something, they wouldn't do it, and that was perfectly okay. or they would do it on their time. And so their brain has been wired that way to where you have a dress code, they just ignore it, and they're like, well, and so you send them home or they get disciplined, and they don't even understand why that happens because they've never been held accountable. They've never been told,
right. And
here's the thing that you need to do, and when they didn't do it, there was no correction there, and so their brains have been wired to not comprehend responsibility.
yeah, agree with you. That's totally the parents' fault. I mean, lack of parenting for all of that.
Nice job, parents.
Yeah, really.
Let's get a traffic update more with Christy Fulnecki, the Pyramid Roofing Company. Talk and text line 447 KSGF. Christy Fulnecki with us. Report reveals secret Democrat plot to replace Joe Biden. According to Daily Mail report, there's a secret
I heard
Democrat
yeah.
to force Biden out of the running and replace him with another candidate. The outlet noted that only notable Democrat figures as former President Obama, Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they believe, are the ones that would actually be able to persuade him potentially to drop out. And so, this is apparently something that they're talking about in the works. I think that the debate is going to be the moment that potentially this is decided.
Don't you think it's already decided? And they're going to use that as an excuse?
No, I think I that if he doesn't have to do good. Just look at the State of the Union is a great example of the standard for the Democrats. He was, he got confused a few times and he made some goofs, but he did not do anything that was, by his standards, humiliating. And so
barking.
Like barking. So the media declared it a victory. Like, see, this takes away any doubt. And I'm like, no, just because your standards are that low does not. I mean, come on. But that's where they are. And so I think that if he does, by his standards, with the standards that they have for Biden, if he fails to meet those, then perhaps they will say, okay, we've got to make a change here. But
it's come about? Was the actual meeting? Because I saw Charlie Kirk had posted that there's going to be, a July surprise and that Trump's going
I
to go to
don't
jail
know.
and then
And
somebody else is going to. I mean, can you imagine if Michelle Obama comes in and Trump goes to jail?
But it wouldn't surprise me. Can you get a better illustration of where we are today than Democrats imprisoning political opposition and then picking someone that would probably amongst the base be wildly popular but cannot give you a single reason substantively as why?
I know. Yeah,
I mean,
right,
really,
right.
like tell me in a
she didn't have a job, I don't think. Maybe
uh,
she worked at a law firm for a little bit.
yeah, in some hospital or something, and they say it was sort of a token job, but yeah, I don't remember the details of it. But usually if you say, well, what is it you like about it? They say things like, well, she's just so inspiring, or okay, but what has she done? What makes you think they don't have
I
anything?
know.
But look, they didn't with Hillary Clinton either. I mean, that became a theme of the campaign. Supporters would be asked, so what do you think's her biggest accomplishment? None of them could ever name it. Even Hillary Clinton was asked, what's your biggest accomplishment once, and she couldn't name one.
Well, I can tell you what Michelle Obama's is because we were talking about it at dinner last night. One of my kids is like, yes, she fat shames kids.
Well, yeah, she does fat.
Because we used to have this ice cream buffet at lunch, and they took it out and put a salad bar in there.
But this is how easily manipulated the left is. Right now, one of what I think is absurd, but one of the big movements of the left is it's body positivity, right?
Yeah, right.
And let's be honest, the more obese you are, the more you're praised for expressing, like Lizzo and some of these others. And anyone who criticizes them as potentially being unhealthy, the left just goes after them. There has been no one as a high profile of a body shamer as Michelle Obama. And kids. To kids, the most vulnerable. Yeah. So, but they will jump on board with her anyhow. All of a sudden, they'll forget about that. She at one point claimed that fat kids were a greater national security threat to this country than terrorism.
Ridiculous.
And they said one of the reasons she didn't like Oprah was because Oprah was fat. And that's why she didn't want her. Yes, that she did not want her around the White House because she was a bad example, because she was fat. And so here you've got this, again, I don't think there's anyone as high profile as her that has been so unapologetically fat shaming in her messaging. But all of the people who are militant about body positivity, they'll all jump on the bandwagon.
I don't understand liberal women at all, the people they support. It's so hypocritical. These Me Too people, all of these that are we're going to have women's rights and whatever. So they go, the administration goes on their abortion tour. And I mean, if they put the fat shaming person in the White House, I mean, it is going to be a total disaster. But I mean, I just thought it was funny. That's the first time my kids like, she changed our lunches.
Yeah. Yeah, because
nobody else knew anything about her.
Well, and the ridiculous thing of course, also was, aside from, even if you wanted to agree with her and like, yeah, there are too many fatties, somebody should have done something about it, the rules were one size fits all. So in terms of the rules that were put in place, in terms of the recommended caloric intake, it was the exact same for some healthy 17-year-old that had an hour and a half of cross-country practice before school as it was for the 400-pound kid that played video games and drank 3 sodas a day.
Yeah.
And so, of course, that's the typical left-wing approach. Everyone just treat them exactly the same, in certain capacities, if they're not actually people with different variety of personalities and body types and everything. And so, even if you felt that it was the government's position to eliminate the fatty kids, the way that they went about it was stupid.
Yeah, it's just about control. They just want control. It is about
control. They're control freaks.
Yeah, totally.
They cannot stand the idea of people living their lives in a way that they don't control and approve of. I mean, when you look at virtually everything that they push, everything they push.
Yeah. Which is, you'd say there's a lot of personality disorders that have that control feature.
I think it is.
Sociopaths. And I mean, I would definitely argue that the Bidens have personality disorder.
If you take the approach and the belief and the philosophy of the left in terms of government and that relationship with the people and transferred it to a couple where you had a guy and a gal, and the guy told the woman what to eat,
Yeah, right.
Told the
Yeah.
woman told the woman what news was and wasn't accurate, what was and wasn't disinformation, told her what sort of refrigerator she had to buy. You'd say that he was a psychotic
Yeah.
control freak and
It's like,
tell her
yeah,
to get
you
out.
didn't see that. You
Right.
didn't see this. Or
Yeah,
I'm cheating
yeah.
on you. You didn't see that. That's
Right,
your
yeah.
it's all in your head. Yeah. It's a cheap fake video that you just saw.
Isolate her from her family, like you see the schools where when it comes to kids keeping things secret,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to gender fluidity from parents, that alienation from family. Those are all things that any normal person sees in a relationship and says, you need to get out. This is not a healthy relationship. But that is the relationship between the left, politically speaking, and the voters.
Yeah.
They're
That's a
voters.
good summary.
Yeah, I thought it was too. Chrissy Fulnecki is here. We continue on. I'm Nick Reed. KSGF.com. You can get the latest information for the upcoming Great Escape. July 1st is the cutoff date for that. Also, KSGF.com, 10 a.m. tomorrow, local for less. Half price $50 gift cards to Fun Mountain at Big Cedar Lodge. And you can learn about the Care to Learn donation drive, which is sponsored by A1 Custom Car Care. All that at KSGF.com. I'm Nick Reed. The first alert forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks, Home Improvements from Color 10, Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly sunny 88 today, 69 for a low tonight, sunny 90 tomorrow, Saturday, sunny hot with a high near 92. Get that dog off. Donald Trump takes aim at Fox News board member. He posted, I think you saw this because I think this was posted in one of the group chats we have.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Or was?
Yeah. I think Karen maybe I
Okay.
think she had posted.
Already.
Yeah, yeah. So he tore into Ryan on Truth Social, citing the infamous former House Speaker as the reason why, quote, nobody can ever trust Fox News, saying, quote, nobody can ever trust Fox News. I'm one of them with the weak and ineffective rhino Paul Ryan on its board of directors. He's a total lightweight, failed, pathetic Speaker of the House, very disloyal person. Romney was bad, but Romney was bad, but Paul Ryan made him look worse. As a team, they never had a chance. Rupert and Lachlan, get that dog off your board. You don't need him. Then all caps. All you need is Trump, make America great again. Well, Paul Ryan,
It's epic.
and this is a
I'm
reason.
telling you, he's such a savage.
The reason someone like Paul Ryan should not be on a board of a news outlet, it's not because he's anti-Trump, but because he has the inability to separate those emotions from what he's supposed to do professionally. And
It's just
yeah, exactly.
It's just in the media.
And this is and by the way, it is just one of the many reasons that we worked for a period of time to sever our relationship with Fox News and go to town hall because of this, and the whole Tucker Carlson. There were just increasingly things that were occurring that demonstrated that and I'm not saying that they're a carbon copy of the other leftist networks like MSNBC and CBS, but they still, to a degree, have this operation that appears to me to censor what's going on. And I think Tucker Carlson's a great example, and it would be, when it came to Tucker Carlson, it would have been a different scenario if they fired him and said, we just don't like you anymore. We don't, go do what you want to. But they wouldn't let him out of his contract, so he couldn't go elsewhere. Right. So they took a step that resulted in, or at least what they thought would result in, him not being able to put out information that you couldn't get anywhere else. Now, of course, has this quote-unquote show on X and so forth, so he's found a workaround. But it was just those sorts of things, and a lot of the verbiage, insurrectionist, and stuff that the left would use, but it all just pieces together, and you could see it. And it's like I said, all of that collectively were part of the reasons that we moved away and went to town hall, which, in my assessment, is just much more straightforward. Here are the facts, and you can't tell, they're pro this or pro that. And Paul Ryan, who's just still. This is a thing with Republican former leadership that I've known. It's the one area that former Democrat leadership and former Republican leadership have in common is they bash Republicans. Both of them do.
I know. Yeah,
I mean, you look at McCarthy.
Yeah, they do not help our party. I can tell you that much.
McCarthy has this obsession with Matt Gaetz. He can't stop.
What's wrong with him?
You got Paul Ryan out there.
Yeah. I don't know what he has such a beef with him.
So there are the former Republican leadership and former presidential candidates. Look at John McCain. John McCain was instrumental in getting the fake Russian dossier into circulation. Mitt Romney, of course. I mean, he's still out there trashing on Trump. And I think there is this indignancy that Republicans get, that Democrats, their overriding thing is power. That's really ultimately what matters. And that doesn't mean that they don't fight and everything, but ultimately in the end, that's what it's about. But you have these people that are in Republican leadership, and I think there's jealousy, there's cattiness, there's pettiness, and because the Republicans and then ultimately the country chose out of order, they paid their dues. Who are we to pick somebody like Donald Trump? And I think they just hate us for it, and they hate him for it, and they can't help themselves. And so they have the inability to recognize that they're hurting the party as a whole by going after Trump. Yeah, that they are helping the Democrats, and that just demonstrates this this level of, I think there's narcissism involved there, again, cattiness, immaturity, and it is for all of the faults that the Democrats have with their leadership, they don't seem to have that problem. And it's
I
not like a
know, yeah.
one-off. I mean, you look at virtually every inexistent former Republican leader, and in some capacity, and they're all that way.
Except for maybe Gingrich. He doesn't do it as
Yeah,
bad.
that's true.
But
no, I agree with you
he's-
there.
I still like listening to him, but the other ones.
But you know what? Gingrich was out of it all before Trump was on the scene.
Well, that's true.
So that's a difference. But John Boehner's another example.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah. So all those, and now I'm not saying that Gingrich would have done it otherwise, but that is.
But I mean, he still defends Trump all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But yeah,
he
is an exception.
Yeah, he's still at Hannity's radio show. The thing is, I don't understand. I've never understood the whole concept of rhino, because if you're going to vote with the Democrats and if you're going to pretty much be a Democrat, why don't you just switch parties? I mean, I know a lot of it's probably about electability. So
I had this conversation with someone a few weeks ago at Scramblers after the show, and I was talking about how you don't have that Democrats don't have that problem. You don't have Democrats that vote pro-life or do these things, right? And he was like, well, yeah. He said, in fact, one of them just switched parties. I said, no, but here's the difference. And you do see it more on a local level. You'll hear about this state rep here that when Democrats begin to vote in a way that's not consistent with the Democrat Party, they actually switch parties.
Right.
They do. They switch parties. Republicans do not do that. They just stay in the Republican Party and poison it.
And damage it.
It's like leave. If you want to vote in a manner that is, and that goes for the people like Lincoln Huff's here locally and these others, when you push all these tax increases and big government, and you block efforts to protect girls against boys competing in sports, you're for the I think even sponsored or came up with legislation to try to make us part of that insane left-wing national vote thing for the president. Like, just say you're. I know why, because he can't get elected that way.
Yeah, right.
But it's at least Democrats, whenever they begin to veer off, they generally have the integrity to switch parties. But when you have somebody that votes for Democrats and they run as a Republican, they lack that integrity.
Yeah, I mean,
get out.
At least you can say the Democratic Party. I mean, when they went fringe, like the whole party went, totally left wing and totally went crazy. So, I mean, all the pro-life Democrats became Republicans. And so, I mean, they're like, hey, we want to be just, totally out there and have all these liberal policies that we used to call like the extreme left wing. And now it's their whole party. But at least they're consistent.
Right.
And they all can unify behind they're all crazy.
And a lot of it is the Republican Party itself. I mean, you look at Lincoln Huff, for example, lieutenant governor, probably going to be that because he's the establishment candidate. And so instead of the Republican Party saying, okay, we need to fix this problem, they back it up because it's about numbers. And we talked with Congressman Burleson about some of the problems with Speaker Johnson. And what happens is, when it comes to, let's say, the speaker, Republican speaker, say, well, we just don't have the vote. You have to understand, we don't have the votes in the Republican Party because we have these Republicans that side with Democrats. But when it comes to primaries, the speaker supports those same Republicans for re-election.
Right.
They campaign for them. So they try and make it sound like, oopsie daisies, we have no choice here. But when they do have an option in order to try to change that landscape, not only do they not exercise that option, but they reinforce the problem. And so it's just so frustrating.
It's overall, people just don't want to stand up and, say anything because they're going to be like, oh, you're crazy like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and they're going to put you in a box, if you try to change the Republican Party. So.
Yeah. Look, yeah.
Good question.
Okay.
So did you hear Holly yesterday?
I know. I read the Boeing questioning.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that because part of me, I'm listening, and I totally believe in safety because I don't want to fall out of the sky as much as I fly. But then it's went on this whole thing about the profit and what the Boeing CEO was making. And I thought that makes me very uncomfortable that you're, no matter if the guy's, if it's a criminal enterprise, it's not like this is a private company.
Yeah.
That just I wondered.
Hawley is very well liked, and I think an area in which he does generally serve the Senate well, Missouri well, and the Republican Party well is when it comes to questioning witnesses.
Yeah, I totally agree
but
with
when
that.
it comes to the free market, he falls in line a lot of times with AOC and Bernie Sanders. Yeah, he's talked about government should, dictate, I think, interest rates on credit cards and, these sorts of things. And so he takes that fascist approach, and I'm using that term literally. I mean, that's fascism is private industry can exist, but government makes these decisions for you, tells you how it's going to be run. And so when it comes to businesses, he takes that fascist approach, and I think he's able to get away with it because what people mostly see are the things that he does that are good and beneficial in terms of those questions. But I did not see that part of it, but it does not surprise me because he really is big government when it comes to the private sector.
Yeah, I thought, I mean, and he did talk about the number of employees in Missouri that work for Boeing and that kind of thing. And then he had some of the victims of, some of the crash victims' families that were in the back. And so I can see if it's about safety, but, and maybe even mentioning, I don't know. To me, like, even that, it's, why would you want the government to interfere what a private company is making? I mean, they are regulated by
the belief government knows best. I mean, he appears to have that belief when it comes to certain industries.
On him. I mean, I really like him, and but I was just thinking doesn't like you hear some Republicans talk, and you're like, what? And then he started on this whole tangent about how you're sending manufacturing out of the country, and I'm like, well, if you gave them an incentive to stay in the country, I mean, the government is totally attacked business, and he was talking about, you're outsourcing so much, and I'm like, do you realize what you do to businesses when you tax them and put all these regulations on them? They have no choice to go to another country.
Or if you beat up on them because of how much they make, you can't really blame them for saying it. Maybe we'll go to Ireland or, we'll work with them.
Are you talking about, I mean, why don't you do something? I mean, at least Trump, he's a businessman and like, oh, well, it's a big shocker. I met with the manufacturing companies and then they're all coming here. Because they're not being taxed to death.
I got a good, speaking of pilot union story, but we've got to take a break. Traffic update with Christy Fulnecki. I'm Nick Reed. Christy Fulnecki this morning. All right, pilot union suggests changing cockpit to flight deck for inclusivity. This is what, you would think that, if anything, for the sake of appearance, when we increasingly have particularly with Boeing and some of this is compartmentalized away from other issues, but to the American consumer and traveler, we continue to see these problems occur. And talking about the conversation or the interrogation, whatever, the questioning of the CEO of Boeing, and there's just all this mess going on. And we increasingly also hear about DEI in this stuff, and that they're very cagey about some of these hires, these individuals that have been responsible for what seem to be near catastrophic accidents, and the people that are said to be by whistleblowers, these are DEI hires, that they have no interest in whether these people are necessarily the best at the job, but do they fit these certain categories. And so when you have a union representing more than 70,000 commercial pilots that are focusing on being more sensitive to women and the LGBTQ plus employees. It's the Airline Pilots Association International, ALPA. It's the world's largest airline pilot union, and they have a guide that directs pilots to refrain from using masculine words such as guys, airmen, manpower, and cockpit to reflect the diversity we have at ALPA to create a more inclusive workplace. And now the word,
What?
I don't even know why, and this is ignorance also at the same time, where they will take words that have no gender connotation whatsoever, but because they have the minds of fifth graders, they think they do, like cockpit. That has nothing whatsoever to do with gender. It goes back hundreds of years. It originated when it came to cockfighting in the pit that they were in, and it's evolved over time. But these are a bunch of juveniles, intellectually and emotionally, who hear certain words, and it's like a bunch of fifth graders.
The union that's wanting this?
Yeah, it's the union it's the biggest pilots union that represents more than 70,000 commercial pilots.
I mean, really? You have that much time that you're going to focus on this?
Other words that they consider non-inclusive are mother and father, because those, quote, may inadvertently ignore different family structures such as caregivers, same-sex parents, step-parents, families with adopted members, and more.
Who cares?
Well,
Please stop being so sensitive.
I know.
It's
What's wrong
beyond
with
that.
people?
It's insane.
It is
That
insane.
You have emotional problems if these things are bothersome to you. And that's what really worries me the most. It isn't so much about where the focus is, but the emotional stability of people who are bothered by these things. I don't.
Yeah, do you want them flying your plane?
that's
if
what-
they're so offended by these
if
words?
somebody,
I don't want them flying the plane.
I don't either. I want somebody flying a plane that is the opposite of this. Someone who almost has no emotion. You know what I mean? And
Well,
you think of pilots as being that way, the way they talk over, like, oh, there's a catastrophic. You want them to be calm. I mean, if somebody can't handle the term cockpit, but there's an emergency in the air and I'm supposed to believe, oh, don't worry, that they're going to be okay with, I don't think so.
That's insane. I thought you were going to say it was some, head of a company that was pushing that. I can't believe that it's the union. That's so interesting because my daughter's filling out, we take her to the Naval Academy next week. So they have to fill out all these forms, and then they go through this plebe summer to get to transition them to military life. So it's all of this about, this is, it's super stringent and everything they have to put them through. And so I'm going through the forums, and it's like, we're the most elite, Navy in the world. And, you have to have your hair this, everything's so precise. And so it's by design to get them to focus on what they're supposed to be doing. Then you have, the head of DOD in the Navy during Pride Month putting all this stuff out. You're like, you want them to focus on these young kids, and then, your political people are putting all of this stuff about, transgender. I mean, what is wrong with you? It's two different messages.
They're nuts.
I know.
I mean, they are. They have severe psychological problems, and maybe I'm wrong, but in my head, for some reason, I thought that you had to have some sort of psychological evaluation to be a pilot.
Yeah, I would think. I would hope.
Just to make sure that you're not crazy.
It would be interesting
and
to
the
see.
fact that the pilots union is so crazy that they're like, we can't handle terms like cockpit and woman and man and. Like, I know this is not the type of people I'm
bust in there. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Don't refer to me as that. I'm not gonna fight you.
Yeah, please let me get my preferred pronouns out before you slit my throat with a box cutter. Christy Fulnecki with us. More coming up. I'm Nick Reed. Tyson Foods,
Okay.
the U.S.-based,
Chicken nuggets.
yeah, among other strips, many forms of chicken.
I'm a mom of 6 kids. That's the first thing I think of is chicken nuggets.
Yep. Tyson Foods, U.S.-based meat supplier that's grown to be one of the world's largest companies, offered shirts to employees for its annual Juneteenth celebration. All right. That literally crossed out July 4th as the nation's Independence Day. The
What?
shirts read Juneteenth is my Independence Day, while another under a crossed out July 4th date states Juneteenth 1865 because my ancestors weren't free in 1776. Well, they never would have been. And this is the thing, without getting too much in the history, but Juneteenth would have never occurred had it not been for the independence of this country and the way that the Constitution was crafted. It was crafted in a way to eventually allow for freedom for everyone. It was recognized at the time that in order to craft the Union, there were some states that were like, we're just not going to do this unless we're allowed to have, the states' rights slavery thing. And so it was written up in a way that eventually they would be forced to get rid of that. So this whole, that's not mine. Well, it's the origins of yours,
right.
all right?
That's
and
right.
secondly,
Exactly.
and you know what? And I talked about this yesterday. It should be called Think a Republican Day or Republican Victory Day, because Juneteenth, the day that it's observed as the day that the last grouping of enslaved people were freed, because it took a while for word to get to them, that is the day that Republicans defeated Democrats over the issue of slavery. The Republican Party was birthed out of the idea that slavery is wrong. You can't own people. They're not your property that you can do with what you want. And so that party was formed, and that's what it's fought over. And Democrats fought tooth and nail, just like they do abortion. It's the same philosophy. Yeah. My property, I can do with it what I want. And so it should be a Republican Victory Day. Think a Republican Day.
Republicans talked about that yesterday.
And this is another area that I have a problem, is that
that's right.
This is yet again, Democrats have somehow managed to hijack it as a day that they are champions of, when they did everything they could to prevent it from happening.
Right. Where are Republicans explaining it? Oh, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to offend anybody. Can we all just get along? No, that's what happened with our country. That's why we can't get along.
Can you imagine in reality? And you've seen these bumper stickers that say, if you speak English, thank a veteran. You've seen those before, or a T-shirt, or if you don't speak German, that sort of thing. You imagine at an event handing out shirts saying, if you're free today, thank a Republican, and handing them out to black. I mean, but that's the history.
Well, I mean, Republicans need to talk about it. And where's my day? Where's my Indian Day? I mean, we didn't have an Indian Day. I think the people that
I was trying to think of something clever to say.
I think the people that established a holiday yesterday would be against us Indians having our own day.
Columbus Day.
That's right.
Well, they do replace it with Indigenous People Day, as if you're all exactly the same. I love that of the left too. You're all exactly the same. Indigenous.
We can't say Indian.
Yeah.
Let's get somebody to send me a message. Are you allowed to say Indian?
Am I allowed to?
Say what about my heritage?
Excuse me. What rich white liberal do I need to ask to get permission? That's what you should respond.
Yes, master. Can I please say that?
Mm-hmm. What, blankets weren't enough? Now you're going to take away my rights to, refer to myself how I want to?
And another thing, I can do peyote wherever I want.
Freedom of religion, dadgummit. I did it in the parking lot before I came in to do the show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's funny how many people have become Indian just because of that. I get a lot of like, if I am part of your church, your Native American church, now does that apply? Do I get to still do that?
Pay some dues. How does this work? Chrissy Fulnecki, as always, it is a great pleasure.
Yes.
Having you here. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Well, thank you. Oh, and I forgot to tell you that 60 Minutes contacted me. So.
Oh, we'll talk about that next week then.
Okay.
Springfield's Talk 104.1. My name is Nick Reed. Tomorrow morning, broadcasting live from Scramblers, the Friday Road Show, sponsored by Custom Shade Window Tinting and powered by 3M Window Film. Also, tomorrow, local for less, Ozarks. For $25, get $50 gift cards to Fun Mountain at Big Cedar Lodge. And you don't have to actually be staying at Big Cedar Lodge in order to go to Fun Mountain. So something to keep in mind there. It is not a requirement. We've got Author of the Week coming up here in just a couple of moments, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. Wilder RV, if you've not ever been through Clinton, Missouri, then you may not be familiar with Wilder RV. If you have, however, I know if you go to Kansas City, it's a common way to get to Kansas City is by way of Clinton, Missouri. And Wilder RV has been on your left-hand side if you're heading north, locally owned, family owned, and people from all over the country travel, whether they are looking to get service done on their RVs for the annual usage or purchasing a new RV or even pre-owned, and financing is available as well. They've just developed this reputation as the place to go from people all across the country because of the selection of product. And they just don't mess around. There's not the pressure. They're not, quote, salespeople. They don't follow you around and, say, well, when you find one that you want to look at, let us know. We'll let you in. And then they let you in with keys, and they're sort of hovering around you. They're open. You can check them all out. When you get there, in fact, they may ask you, so what do you got, a family? Is this just you and your dog? Where are you looking to head? What sort of usage? And they'll probably recommend, based on what you're looking for, a certain area of their campus, if you will, and then just say, go in any that you like. Let us know if you like anything that you see, and we can get to work on that. So it's one of the reasons I hate being pressured. I hate being sold to, and it's why I like Wilder RV so much. In Clinton, Missouri, you can find them at wilderrv.com, also at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. Weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update. First Alert Forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly sunny today with a high near 88, 69 low tonight, 90 for a high tomorrow with sunshine, and then hot again on Saturday, sunny with a high of 92. Traffic update, and then we will chat with our Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. Also, KSGF.com streaming and on YouTube. You can watch as the show unfolds. That's sponsored by Springfield Wraps, who also designed the KSGF studio. And every so often, we're fortunate enough to have our author of the week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone, in studio with us. Generally, it's because it's somebody that is local, though we've had some non-locals, and want to welcome into the studio our author today, Lee Salfeld. The book is The Machete and the Cross, An Encounter with Death in the Amazon Jungle of Ecuador. Welcome.
Well, it's good to be here, Nick. Thank you.
So before we get into the story here, your background.
Well, when I graduated from high school, there was a war going on in the country called the Vietnam.
Where high school?
I went to Schuyler High School in Nebraska.
Okay.
And there was a draft going on, so I joined the Navy instead of being drafted, thinking, well, I probably wouldn't have to go to Vietnam. In 4 years, I made it there 3 tours.
So you're a frequent attendee.
A frequent flyer, yes, to Vietnam. That's one way of putting it.
So after that, how did you go from there to being in Ecuador? What got you in Ecuador? And tell us a bit about the Machete and the Cross.
Well, all through my youth and young adulthood, I didn't know anything about Christianity. I was never introduced to who Jesus is. And when I was 48 years old, actually, I accepted Jesus as my Savior. It changed my life. And we knew that, my wife and I both knew that we were called to be missionaries. And so, the Lord will put you in places that He knows you're going to achieve, but you can't do it on your own.
Right.
So we knew that we were supposed to be missionaries. And so we did many mission to other countries. I actually knew that I was supposed to go to Spanish-speaking countries, and so I've ministered in 8 different Spanish-speaking countries. My wife and I now speak Spanish because we lived in Ecuador for 7.5 years. And while we were there, I developed a jungle ministry, which is what the book is about. I spent 6 years of the 7 years going to the jungle in an area called Tiwinsa, very deep into the jungle. Oftentimes I was the first North American that people had ever seen.
So how do you get there? You just somebody help get you there? Say, oh, hey, I know an area that can use you, that you can be a benefit to. Or do you just sort of door to door, if you will?
Well, no.
Jungle to jungle, I suppose.
Many people who are part of various religious groups are sponsored by their churches or their religious affiliations, but we're independent. And so my wife and I in 2005 formed our ministry, which is called Knowing Him and Making Him Known, an international ministry. And so we raise our own funds. That's what this book is really about. It's not about promoting a book. It's about promoting Jesus Christ and what he did this for me, and he'll do it for you too. And that's really the story I am trying to get out.
You mentioned that you felt that you were supposed to go to Spanish-speaking countries.
Yes.
Why is that? How is it that you end up picking the locations that you pick?
Well, in 1999, I was just minding my own business in our home over in Kimberling City, here in Missouri, and the Lord spoke to me, and He'll speak to people. He'll speak to you if you just are open and willing to listen. And He says, I'm sending you to the Spanish-speaking countries. But Lord, I don't speak Spanish. He says, I didn't ask you to speak Spanish. I said, I'm sending you to the Spanish-speaking countries. So I knew that's where we were supposed to go, and I've done now, including the trips to the jungle and the other Spanish-speaking countries only. I've been on 175 mission trips.
There clearly, hence the book, hostilities that occur in these different areas, some just because. I think oftentimes there isn't even a need for a reason other than you don't belong here. Some may be for religious reasons. What was the driving force behind the hostilities that you encountered?
Okay, on the Christmas time in 2015, we were in this village. Yelpi was the name of it, and we were driving back to our base camp, which was in the community of Santiago, right near the Peruvian border, across from the Santiago River from Peru. And a motorcycle pulls right out in front of me. It was raining, and he came over the curb, jumped out in front of me, like 40 feet in front of me. and I swerved to miss him, but I did not miss him, and I struck the motorcycle. Both of the bodies crashed back into the windshield of our van. One died immediately, and the other one died about
I know
3
there's
hours later.
a photo of that vehicle in the book.
That is correct. There's a photo where you can see the indentations of the bodies on the front of my van. Well, I had 3 things that were really against me. In Ecuador, the fact that a motorcycle was involved, that was strike number 1. Strike number 2 is somebody died. Strike number 3 was I was a foreigner. And
sure.
even though I had been in these communities 71 times already, I had never ministered in this village where this happened. So they didn't know me too well there. And so when we took the vehicle back to our base camp, the police said, bring the vehicle over to the police station. And as soon as I got out of the vehicle, he put handcuffs on me, took me back to the scene, and the communities in the jungle declared tribal law, and they were going to prosecute me. And their goal was to kill me. And there was 150 men with machetes on their shoulders. They were kind of in a military formation in a semicircle in front of me. And my judge and jury were 6 members of the dead man laying there in the road, which they left him in the road.
That sounds objective.
Yeah, very objective. And if it hadn't been for, as I was praying, going back to the scene with handcuffs on, the Lord spoke to me and says, Lee, what is it you need now? And I said, I could have been, said like Solomon did, give me wisdom, let me have understanding, or maybe make this nightmare end or something like that. But no, I says, can you give me Spanish, better understanding and speaking than I've ever had it? I didn't know what I was going to be confronted with. And so as I got as he pulled me out of the vehicle, the dead man's laying there in the road, and he said, well, speak to them. What do I say? He says, I don't care what you say. It's your life, not mine. And he says, you can talk to them as a group or individually. And I had my handcuffs on, and very boldly, I just put my arms around each person's neck and pulled them close to me and spoke to them in the best Spanish I ever spoke, ever. And I said, what I said to him is in the book. And when I got to his 8-year-old daughter, she laid her head on my shoulder and started crying. It just broke the atmosphere. Everything changed. And these people were then going to vote. It was, the odds of me surviving this were probably less than 1/2%.
Right.
And the policeman says, well, what's the vote? And they were supposed to thumbs up or thumbs down, I die. And it would have been immediately, they would have just made me a...
Now, did they need, this may sound like a absurdly technical question, but did it need to be unanimous? Was it a majority rule? What?
I don't know what
Or
that was.
maybe there wasn't a hard and fast rule.
Yeah, I didn't understand jungle law in the first place, and I was just kind of watching all of this as it was unraveled. And the policeman wanted me dead as well, because there were about 1,000 people in town waiting to riot, burn the community down.
Yeah.
My wife was there checked into the local hotel, if you could call it that, and they would have probably killed her too, and burned our church down. It was terrible. So he wanted me to become the sacrifice as well.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll continue on. The book is The Machete and the Cross, An Encounter with Death in the Amazon Jungle of Ecuador. Though I think to some degree we can all figure out what the verdict was, given that you're sitting here. But still, I would like to hear that. And then what lessons, because you are right about this, but also lessons that people you learned and that people can learn.
Yes.
And one of the biggest questions that all humans ask, regardless of religious beliefs, is, why do bad things happen? And your thoughts on that as well as we continue on the Author of the Week. Sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone, I'm Nick Reed. Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. In studio, we have Lee Salfeld, The Machete and the Cross, an encounter with death in the Amazon jungle of Ecuador. So catch people up here a bit. You're ministering in the jungle. There's an accident. A motorcycle pulls in front of you. The two passengers
Passenger, yes.
lose their life, and the judicial system in the jungle is essentially drag you off to the village in handcuffs and gather 6 individuals that had a connection to the victims and tell you, all right, plead your case, and then they're going to decide whether or not you're executed. You pled your case, and then the formality was a thumbs up, thumbs down. Suspect again. We know somewhat how things turned out. You are sitting here, but tell us about that, if you would.
So I finished with the last person. The people that were interviewing, or, I was to speak to, were two aunts, a brother, one of his daughters. He had 2 children. The man, by the way, that was laying there in the street, that was dead, he was covered with a sheet. His name was, in English, is Lazarus. Lazaro was in Spanish, and I had prayed for him at the scene of the accident, but he did not raise.
I was gonna. You were probably thinking, boy, I know that would be such a coincidence. However, I wouldn't mind that at this time.
Yeah, Lord, could you please? Well, the Lord, I think you said something about why bad things happen to good people, and the scripture that says this is very clear. John 10:10. For the thief, the enemy, the devil, he comes but to steal, kill, and destroy. He's the one that causes these things to happen. And then that same sentence, Jesus says, but I come to give you life and give it to you with abundance. So the Lord knows these things, what's going to happen. He can tell it. He knows the future just like the present. And he knows that he can change these things through you if you're obedient and listen. And he will turn the negative things into positive. And that's what was about to happen. And if I would have been killed there, the story was over. But now I have a testimony to share, which if God would do this for me, he'll do it for you as well.
Again, this is going to sound like an absurd question, but the pictures play out in my mind. The thumbs up, thumbs down in terms of execution, was thumbs up execute?
No, thumbs up meant I live.
Okay. Did they all do it at once, or was it one at a time? And I know it seems like such a absurd question to ask, but as I play it in my mind, imagery, I just wonder what that was like.
Well,
and I can't imagine what you're feeling. I also want to know, I'll throw a couple questions at you here. Did you have faith that it was going to turn out, or did you have faith that whatever happened, you were okay with?
Whatever happened, I remember what the Apostle Paul said. For me to live is for your benefit. For me to die is I get to be with the Lord immediately. And so my moment of torture would only be very short-lived. So I was not afraid because Paul said it's a benefit for me either way. And so I wasn't afraid. I did not have any fear through the whole thing. My faith was stronger than it had ever been in my life. And once you experience something like this, your life is never the same. You know, sure. I can survive this. I can survive other things as well. So I'm standing there with handcuffs on. The policeman is right next to me, and the 6 people. I'm looking down the line, and I felt like my heart was just beating up as high in my neck. I was a little the longest minute in my life probably. And as we're standing there, and he says, "Well, what's the vote?" And all the people, all the warriors with the machetes it's silent. And I thought, what if there was one person, just like when they were going to, when Jesus was standing in front of Pilate, and one person says, kill him, execute him, and they give us Barabbas. And all one person had to do was speak up, and there would be a riot. Because the people were waiting. They were there for one reason, to kill me. And the people, I believe the Holy Spirit was really speaking to these people. And they just stood there. Their hands were folded. Their eyes were looking down. They didn't look to the left. They didn't look to the right. They just looked down, and they had to have been hearing, "Do not vote." Not one of the people, they said, "What do we do?" Nothing like that. They weren't. They just stood there, and they didn't move. They were like statues. There was no thumbs up. There was no thumbs down. It was a neutral vote. And after about the longest minute, like I said, the policeman finally grabbed me, and he says, "Get in the car," and threw me back in the back seat of the little police van. And
were you wondering, what does this mean? I mean, because you didn't get a definitive answer.
I was kind
one way
of
or another.
It was kind of in a daze, the whole thing, and all of a sudden, wow, I'm still alive. This is good. This is cool. I'm still
Yeah.
alive. And they were back in the police car, and I thought, wow, that was over, but it was just beginning. The rest of the night was horrendous. It's all in the book, and then the next day was a pretrial in front of a circuit judge who came in special for my case. I was the only English speaking person at that trial.
Did all of that happen? I'm thinking of the time, the location, and the inability to communicate in the way that we did today without your wife knowing about it?
My wife was when I took the van over to the police station and left it there. I got out. He said, "Give me the keys." I handed him the keys. My wife was standing there. She walked over to this little station because she was not about to get in that van again. It sounded like a shotgun went off when those two bodies hit into the windshield. And so she said, "Yeah, I'm not having anything to do with that van." And so when she was standing there when the policeman put the cuffs on, and it was kind of like I was in a daze at that point, and she told me what he said: "If you fight me, I will make it very difficult," as he grabbed his billy club. He was going to hit me if I didn't take those cuffs. And so my wife was standing there, and she said goodbye to me, and she thought when she gave me a kiss that she thought
That
it
was
was the
it.
last time she'd
Yeah,
ever see me
yeah.
alive. She in the spirit really felt that this was
Yeah.
it. And had they all had their ways, it would have been the last
Right.
time.
Huh. I want, if it's all right with you, hold you over for one more segment,
Sure,
if you don't
that's
mind.
fine.
And I know you mentioned that that was just sort of the beginning of it, and we do want we don't want to go through the entire book,
Right.
because we want people to purchase it and then talk about what that means as well,
Yes.
and then any final thoughts that you have. Our author Lee Salfeld, The Machete and the Cross: An Encounter with Death in the Amazon Jungle of Ecuador. And incidentally, ABC Books being the sponsor, it's a ways down the road, and we'll remind people, but I think in November you're going to be doing a book signing there? Okay.
Yeah, Saturday, November 16th.
All right. So we'll have to remember to remind people as we do get closer to that. We'll actually just be back from Mexico on that date.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, we do a great escape once or twice a year where we do the show from abroad, and we'll be in Mexico
Wow.
that week. You all ought to come.
Let me go with you.
Yeah,
I
go.
speak Spanish.
Hey, well, see, it all works out nicely. Let's get a traffic update. More with Author of the Week in moments. I'm Nick Reed. First alert forecast. Sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, it is going to be a sunny day with a high near 88. Tonight, clouds 69, mostly sunny, a high near 90 tomorrow, and a bit warmer Saturday, sunshine hot with a high near 92. Don't forget Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, for all of your home buying needs, your home selling needs. We always try as best as possible as a station that provides you information as to, when possible, connect you up with the best people, particularly when it comes to some of those big decisions in life. And buying a home and selling a home is huge. For many people, it's the once-in-a-lifetime decision. For others, you do it more often, but oftentimes it's associated with a life change, either a family that's getting larger, or maybe the kids have moved out, or maybe a job change, and those are emotional times. And to add on top of it the stress of having to find a new home can be something that can be overwhelming, and to have somebody like Emily that is able to lift that burden and help guide you through that is something that you can just really hear in the remarks, the comments, and the feedback that people provide on social media when they have that experience with Emily Johnson. So when it comes to any home buying or selling needs, whether it is a real simple transaction that you've done many, many times, or it is because of a big life change, Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, for all of your home buying and selling needs at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. We're doing an extra segment here with our author of the week, Lee Salfeld. The book is The Machete and the Cross, An Encounter with Death in the Amazon Jungle of Ecuador. And, we've, of course, for those that are just tuning in, we've talked a bit about the journey to be a missionary in ministry in Ecuador, and the incident in which, resulted in Lee standing there before 6 individuals deciding whether or not he would be executed. And of course, there's a lot more to it, which is a great reason to buy the book. And buying the book, not only is it a great, story, if you will, but there's a cause behind it as well. Correct?
That is correct. People don't understand in general that God has a plan for every person's life. He knows what it is. The Bible says he knows it while you're still in your mother's womb. And so, and God cannot lie, he cannot change. So that plan has never changed for your life. The idea is to find out what that plan is. And once you do, then you can fulfill your goal in life. And that's what I was doing. Is I was going to the Spanish-speaking countries, and then to the jungle. And this is where, it gets me. I'm standing in front of this group. And why is this? Why I said, why is this? And so it's taking that testimony now and telling people that we can all have this relationship with our Father who has this plan for us, but we got to know him. It's like so many children today who are orphans who don't even know their father. How is he going to be an influence in their life if they don't know him? And our Father in heaven is waiting for us to get to know him. And through this book, I introduce people to that opportunity so that you can find out the plan for your life. And I had said earlier that I didn't know mine until I was age 48. It started becoming clear to me. And in this book, you can find out how you can find out what your plan is for your life. And so that's what I was doing, is just fulfilling my plan that's for my life.
And so I imagine in some capacity when people purchase the book, that helps to some degree go to your cause, your missions.
That is correct. In 2020, right before COVID started, my wife and I we did three countries in a row. In January of that year, we went to Ecuador, did conferences there. Then in February, we were in Colombia for the same thing. And then as I was getting ready to go to Cuba, the third country in a row in March, the Lord spoke to me again. I was on the airplane, and he says, when you leave Cuba, you will write the book about your experience. And I says, I don't know how to do this. And he says, I will show you. And so I started writing the book, doing what he said to do. And he says, this book is not about you and what you did. It's about what I did for you so that you can be here to tell the story. He said, this book is not yours. It's to glorify me, he said. And so all the funds that come in on the book go into our ministry, Knowing Him Ministry, to promote salvation and to take the gospel of Jesus Christ to the Spanish-speaking countries, which we're doing right now very strongly in Cuba.
Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing the story. And like I said, there's so much more in the book. It does play out, and it is true. It plays out to like a movie,
yes,
you could see, which perhaps one day I think to myself, if I were in your situation and I envision this sort of story, because it could be a movie, like who would play me? Have you thought about that? Who would play you if this was made into a movie?
There's been several people have suggested names to me. I've picked up a couple names.
Have they been flattering names or like, oh, really?
Well, one of them was a guy by the name, I think his name is John Snyder. He played Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and he's
Right.
Christian, and he plays in movies
He was
right
the, he
now.
was the I believe he was the blonde Duke
That is
brother.
correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. That name has come up, and then there's another
Okay.
gentleman who I cannot think of his name that played Jesus in one of the movies.
Okay.
And so somebody knows him. I don't know if getting the person to play my role is getting the cart before the horse, but I got to find a
But it's
producer.
fun to think
It
about.
is.
I mean,
Well,
hey, right.
that's interesting you bring that up, Nick, because the Lord says once the book is out, he says, I want you to pursue a movie for this book. He says, because in these last days, as you're sharing with people in your regular show, people are giving up in hope. There's not much hope.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't know what to do, where to go. And he said, my people need hope. And he says, I want you to pursue a movie on this.
You know what I think and what I like about the idea of something like this, which I would call it ultimately a Christian theme into a movie, is there tends to be, and this is not an original idea. Matt Walsh, whom we carry here at 8 o'clock in the evenings, he was talking about Christian films one night, and he was talking about how the problem that oftentimes occurs, if you want to look at it that way, is because they are so Christian films, they are so, I guess, overtly Christian. They don't really reach beyond the Christian audience.
Yes.
Because it's about Christianity in a way that is like, hey, this is about Christianity. And so you do a lot of, if you will, preaching to the choir, which isn't a bad thing. But if your goal is to reach people outside of it, to reach people who may not know the message or understand the message of God and Christ and Christianity, so that you can do that, which as a missionary, obviously this is what you do anyhow. And so a movie that is very exciting in and of itself, the story itself that has the intrigue and the suspense that does pull in audience that isn't necessarily in the choir, but then they get that message and that understanding. That's why I like the idea of something like this becoming a movie.
I believe that's a very good theme, because I do flashbacks in the book to when I was growing up and how difficult it
Right.
was when we had I grew up in a little town that didn't even have a church. I bet there wasn't one Christian in the whole community. So I basically had no exposure to this. Nobody ever told me about Jesus. Nobody ever told me about salvation. And one of my tours in Vietnam, the third one when I was there, I was working in a field hospital, and it was many people were dying. It was large. I mean, there was not a day gone by during the Tet Offensive that I didn't take a body to the morgue. And one day I'm standing there with this body. I'm waiting for the morgue to open at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I dressed this body all, he died the night before, and I'm standing there. I says, Lord, I don't know who you are. I don't know what's happening. This could have been me laying here instead of him. What's the deal? Right? Yeah, what's the deal? This is way bigger than me. Yeah. Why doesn't somebody tell me about this? And so that's been one of my motivations, because I was hungry to know more about the universe, what's going on, and nobody told me. And so that's one of the reasons I do share it with people. And my wife and I have made all these trips, and we've led probably more than 18,000 people to the Lord now in all of our trips.
Final thoughts for folks listening?
Well, the book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. The Machete and the Cross is the title, and you can Google that, or my name, Lee Salfeld, and it'll bring it up. I'm trying to get a number of books out, not so much for the selling, but to move so people, we increase the numbers, because the publisher says if we do well, they'll do it in Spanish for me as well. And I want the Spanish version to go out as well.
Well, and I know a tremendous number of our listeners, they hear these, and of course they go to ABC Books as well. And as we mentioned, in November, the 16th, you'll be doing a book signing. But we will remind folks, so don't think, I need to get that on my calendar as I'm driving, because that is some time off or down the road. And we, again, appreciate you being here. And it is spelled, for people, it's Saalfeld, Salfeld. So Lee Salfeld, our author of the week. The Machete and the Cross, an encounter with death in the Amazon jungle of Ecuador. Thank you very much, and it's great to meet you.
It's my pleasure, Nick. Thank you very much for having me.
Got a traffic update. Oh, actually, we got the traffic updates out of the way. Just a quick break. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Well, more rain may move through the listening area next week. And if you are worried that your roof can't handle another storm, it is time to call Josh and his team with the Pyramid Roofing Company. When it comes to your home, the Pyramid team, they are not going to cut corners. They won't reuse materials. They will apply Ice and Water Shield, which that is a stick-down product that actually helps prevent water in the most common areas that leak. And they put that product on the valleys around the vents and even the eaves. And not all roofing companies, they don't actually use Ice and Water Shield, and that product can actually add years to your roof. So if it is time to have the Pyramid team come out, do a free roof inspection for you, go ahead and give Josh a call today. You can find all of that contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
We were in the last, I believe it was in the last hour, comparing California, Florida, and the people's behavior as opposed to what we're told in this Orwellian world that we live in. So, for example, we're told that California is just the greatest place ever, and Florida is this horrific place that is filled with homophobic people that are racist and anti-science, and it's horrible and it's terrible, to the point Gavin Newsom, and I think he believes his own hype, actually debated Ron DeSantis several months ago. That was something Sean Hannity moderated. And the reality, of course, is people flee California and they go to places like Florida. I mean, that's where the truth is. You can talk about statistics, you can talk about marketing, all you want, but just look at how people are behaving. What are they doing? Gavin Newsom, he is being mocked online because he is bragging about the number of arrests that have recently occurred regarding retail theft. Now, as most of you know, California has been the recipient of a massive increase in these sorts of thefts. It was predicted that it would occur because of the laws changed in California that essentially, what I think the dollar, it was like $800. There was a certain dollar amount that they declared would be, everything under it would be a misdemeanor. And so you're essentially giving people permission to steal and not worry about consequences. And you combine that with this sense of hopelessness that so many stores had, that they just got to where they told employees don't bother even trying to stop them. If somebody is brazen about it, you let them walk out. And that approach is something that many people have conflicts over. But just that entire environment led to these massive spikes in crime. So Gavin Newsom is being mocked because bragging about numbers that he says indicate that they are succeeding in fighting something that most people recognize were as a result of his policies in the first place. This is the classic arsonist who turns out to be a firefighter, or the nurse that is, just happens to be at the right place at the right time and saving patients who go into cardiac arrest, only to find out that she's the one who was causing the cardiac arrest, or he causing the cardiac arrest because they wanted to be a hero. And so people are like, well, that's nice and all. Maybe not creating the problem in the first place would have been a nice step. But there's a further point to be made here. Using statistics that reference the number of people arrested is not an indicator as to whether or not crime is not only under control, but actually being dealt with. These individuals don't care about getting arrested. The problem is, after they get arrested, they get turned right back out on the street, and they know this. There have been numerous instances, some horrific. One of them in the Las Vegas area last year, where you had the two, I think they may have even been teenagers. If not, they were not much older than that deliberately ran over and killed a guy on a bicycle just for fun. Filmed it, laughing. And one of them, upon arrest, said, I'll be out in no time. I mean, there's no fear of repercussions. And these criminals know this, which is why they commit crimes in areas that are, under the jurisdiction of blue folks, the left. You got the left-wing prosecutors, oftentimes George Soros-funded individuals, and this is where the real problem is. And so you can arrest. Arrests have gone up 520%. Well, first off, how many of those people are repeat arrests? And secondly, the arrest is not what matters. They don't care about. There is not a single one of these individuals that are ultimately involved in the culture of crime that give two licks about being arrested. This is one of two things. It's either Gavin Newsom actually thinking that things are being changed in a meaningful way, which is not the case at all, or it is the deliberate masquerading of doing nothing as doing something. I played for you weeks ago the audio of a discussion on CNN in which it was just right after those 5 illegals from, I think, Venezuela attacked a couple of police officers. And just the imagery was a summation of what has occurred in this country, where you have 5 people who are so unafraid in this country as illegal aliens that they are kicking police officers in America with no fear whatsoever of repercussions. And there was this panel discussion they were having about lawlessness and about all the problems in New York. And there were 3 folks there, one of which his job was to get on the scene and report. And he said that one of the things that he learned is that these criminals would do all of this, stealing, and much of it, they would sell and get cash. Then they would go to Florida and spend it and then go back to New York. And the question that was asked by one of the CNN folks was, well, why do they go all that hassle? Why don't they just stay in Florida? And his answer was straightforward. He said, because they say they know that they'll be locked up there. Not just arrested, but locked up, that they will suffer, that it's not worth it. This is a trick that we all need to be aware of, and I know many of you are. But anytime you see the number of arrests being used as proof or an indication that crime is being, is getting under control, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not true, but it certainly doesn't mean that it is. There's a big difference between being arrested and being punished, particularly in a meaningful way. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. The examples of gaslighting, if you will, by the media are becoming so comical when it comes to Biden's decline. You think it cannot become any more cartoonish and absurd than what we've already been dealt. And that, of course, we've heard Joe Biden is the sharpest guy in the room, behind closed doors, behind closed doors, behind closed doors. To the point that even SNL, a few months ago, that was their opening sketch that they did. It was I don't remember who the anchor was or being portrayed, but they had different guests on, and they were all talking about the two absurd lengths, Joe Biden and what an athlete he is, and how he's the smartest person in the room, and that's because it's so clearly obvious that they're trying to gaslight that even Saturday Night Live could not avoid it. Listen to this MSNBC headline. Trump cognitive decline increasingly difficult to conceal despite setting low bar. Not Biden, Trump. I saw that there was another article. Huffington Post has a montage of extremely damaging clips of Donald Trump forgetting people's names. Now, here's the thing. Particularly if you're an individual who meets crap tons of people all the time. You do forget. I am horrible at names. Some people are much better at it. I'm not one of those individuals. Even when it comes to somebody running for president, I am sympathetic when you have somebody, they show up and they say they're in Cleveland and they're in Green Bay or whatever, because I understand that they aren't handling their own schedules on a micro level, and they just get in the SUV and the plane, they go from one place to the other. And so I understand how you can lose that. You know, when you're on vacation also, and maybe you forget what day it is. So there's a spectrum. And there is what is normal forgetfulness. Normal. And what they're trying to do here, and I know we all see it and know it, but it just seems as if it's the sort of thing that, because of the way the media presents it, that should be articulated. What they're trying to do is take what is the normal, everyday behavior of a person who might forget something, slips their mind, and conflate it with what Joe Biden is doing. These are two very, very different things. Two very different things. You can take two people, one that sits in a recliner all day long, only gets up to get a beer, go to the bathroom, and then somebody else who is extremely athletic and healthy that also sits in a chair for 20 minutes, take a picture of that person and claim, well, they're both sitting in chairs. It's not the same. We'll see you tomorrow morning. We will be broadcasting live, of course. Custom shade window tinting powered by 3M Window Film, sponsoring our Friday Road Show at Scramblers. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.